Hello guys, this is Deepika from mytutorialrack.com. In the previous tutorial, we shared information between two developer repositories. One is MyGit repo and the other one was the Mary's repo. This kind of environment works for small teams developing simple programs, but in larger projects, they need a more structured environment. So in this tutorial, we will talk about a centralized workflow. Now what we're going to do here is we will use a third Git repository which will act as a central communication hub between us and Mary's repository. So instead of pulling changes into MyGit repo from Mary's repo or pulling changes into Mary's repo from MyGit repo, we will push to and fetch from the dedicated storage repository, which will be the central repository. So in a real-time environment, we would store this central repository on a server to allow the internet-based collaboration. Unfortunately, the server configuration varies among hosting providers. So it will make it hard to provide a general step-by-step instruction. So what I'm going to do is I will continue exploring this remote repository using the local file system. So instead of putting this repository on a server, I'm going to go ahead and put it on my local file system. If you have access to server, you're free to host your central repository on the server. Otherwise, just for the learning purpose, we will assume that our central repository is also on this local file system. So now we are going to go ahead and create this central repository. So we'll go back to our bash prompt, and here right now I am inside of the MyGit repo. So under the same directory, means on the same desktop, I will also create this central repository. So I'll go one step back. So right now I am in the desktop, and now I'm going to go ahead and say git init, means I'm going to initialize, but this time I'm giving a -- bear flag. We'll talk about this flag in a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and create this central repository of git. So what this command is doing, now git init creates a new repository, but since we have provided this bear flag which tells Git that we do not want a working directory. So the purpose of this central repository is just to take the changes or have the updated project. But in the central repository, we are not going to do any development, or we are not going to do any code changes. We will either get the code changes from central repository, or we are going to put the code changes into the central repository, but we are not going to go ahead and do any development in the central repository. So using the -- bear flag, we are telling Git not to create a working directory. Okay, we do not want a working directory. So now if you go inside of your MyGit repo, and if you go one step back, you will see there is this folder got created called central repo.git. And if you compare the contents of this folder with the MyGit repo, so how you can do it, if you go back and if you go back to desktop, and if you compare the contents of this folder with the MyGit repo.git folder, so if you go inside MyGit repo here, if you go inside this folder and if you compare this .git folder here, they have the same kind of files. They have the hooks, they have the info, they have logs. They do not have log, that's fine, objects and everything else. It's similar to the MyGit repo, but it does not have a working directory, because what we did is we used this bear flag to tell Git that we do not want a working directory.